I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Joe asks a good question as he peruses the headlines we have pulled up in the viewing screen for you guys, where we will go over the articles that we have for today's program. Has Jeremy Hutchinson gotten tanner? Has he gotten a tan?
No. I'm just asking. Does he now have someone on his legal team named Tanner?
Oh, does he have some? No. Oh, okay. No. You actually do mean more son. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good. As soon as Joe brought it up, I said, yeah, you know what? He does look like it. Go ahead and throw that photo up there. He does look like he's got a little son. He's had a little son. You know, as opposed to, I mean, I would assume in jail you don't really get, they don't have tanning beds, or I don't know. Maybe do they have yard time? Is that a thing?
You've seen the A-Team, right?
Anyway, Jeremy Hutchinson did it again. He pled guilty to these charges up in Missouri. This is, of course, a former state senator, Jeremy Hutchinson, admits that he took bribes. They dismissed the 20-something counts for his one guilty plea to one count. This, of course, on the heels of him pleading guilty in the Western District of Arkansas on charges there. Or was that the Eastern District? Anyway, he pled guilty in Arkansas. And so we kind of are at this, this point where everybody's speculating. Is Jeremy Hutchinson cooperating with the government? The last reporter to ask that question didn't get an answer. This was a couple weeks ago. They just had no comment. Senator Hutchinson's attorney, Tim Dudley, said he got no comment on whether or not we're cooperating with the government. A lot of people wonder, and if you know anything about what was going on at the Marble Palace in Little Rock and what had been going on for a very long time, a lot of people knew that Jeremy Hutchinson was engaged in all of this activity, and they did nothing about it. As a matter of fact, I want to propose a hypothetical to all of you out there, and I think a lot of you will agree with me, and the bureaucrats and the people who are part of the status quo with the Marble Palace, you guys know this is true. That if Jeremy Hutchinson had not resigned and he would have been a senator during this last session, and everybody, let's assume everybody knew what was actually going on, they knew about the investigation, but they didn't have any actual charges yet, they didn't have any indictments yet, Jeremy Hutchinson would have still legislatively gotten everything he wanted. You know it, and I know it, because that's the way things work down there. Now, why bring up the hypothetical? I mean, I guess technically there's no way to prove my, speculation is being correct. Okay. My hypothesis generally is that the environment is so corrupt, or the environment is so lenient on corrupt individuals that's just where corruption will flourish, where everybody knows what's going on, but everybody doesn't say anything and lets it happen. Well, a few people would say something. I do want to thank, though, from somebody, from a standpoint, and I think we should all be grateful. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with all of this, but the fact of the matter is, this is justice. The wheels of justice do turn slowly, but when you do get to points like this, we do have to say that this so far is justice. I mean, we don't know what the sentencing is going to be. I know former Senator John Woods, who we now know Jeremy Hutchinson gave up years ago. I mean, he got 18 years. But the fact of the matter is, there was corruption, and eventually we've gotten to this point. And it's taken too long, but that's just, I guess that's the way things go. I'm grateful that the FBI did their jobs here. I'm grateful that we have U.S. attorneys from the Western District of Missouri and Arkansas and Eastern District of Arkansas that have gotten us to this point. And I think, we talk about the corruption, we talk about the negativity. The fact of the matter is, we are here. And this is a lot better place to be than where we were, where everybody was whispering about what they knew was wrong and illegal, but letting it happen. We are definitely in a better spot because the people of Arkansas who follow this stuff and know what's going on, understandably so, have a lack of faith in their own government because of this stuff. So Jeremy Hutchinson, again, pleading guilty for a second time. Coming up at the top of the next hour, we'll check in with former Senator Brian King and get his reaction to what happened in that Missouri courtroom yesterday. Also coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking with Karen Lugo. We do have a serious problem, I think, when it comes to the fact that the Supreme Court is trying to tell the people of America that they may not govern themselves by getting an accurate count of how many people live in this country so that we can form a government and seat a Congress. That, ladies and gentlemen, people throw this phrase around loosely. We have a constitutional crisis. Oh, it was a constitutional crisis if Trump does this. It's a constitutional crisis. No, folks. The Supreme Court passing on it, deciding this question because, well, the question really wasn't whether or not the bureaucracy can do this. We question the intent, and all of that is because of racism, by the way. Everybody's terrified of being painted a racist. And because all of the people who are flooding our southern border are from, Mexico, Central, or South America, people are afraid that they're going to be categorized as a racist when honestly, it doesn't matter what the motivation is. The only thing the courts need to decide is whether or not the executive branch can do X, Y, or Z. And the answer is clearly, you can put a question considering the fact we have a massive immigration problem, a legal immigration problem, you can put a question on there that says, are you a citizen of the United States? I think we all know that Congress has one too many congressmen. They've got one too many delegates because those people are being counted, and they're not supposed to be able to vote in the apportionment process of how we seat our government. It's insane. And to tell the American people that you can't do that is telling them that you can't govern yourself properly. The very idea, the very thought in and of itself, in my opinion, is unconstitutional. We'll be talking with Karen J. Lugo, who's speaking on her personal behalf, but she's also done work with the Texas Public Policy Institute and other entities as well. Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather. Did go to the doctor yesterday. Been trying to kick this cough that I've had, and I let it sit way too long. All right, so we got that for you, and then we'll have a young conservative segment. Introduce you to a man by the name of John Williams coming up. Yeah, I know, I hadn't had one of those in a while. He'll be in studio, by the way, and we'll get to talk to him. That'll be fun. Now, let's start with how much time we have left. Okay, I've kind of taken up way too much time here in the intro. Bill Clinton. No, because this is an Arkansas-based show. I mean, anytime we talk about Bill Clinton, we do so with a sense of lamentations. Don't you think? Anytime we here in Arkansas talk about Bill Clinton, we do so with a feeling of shame and regret. I mean, I do, because, I mean, the corrupt bureaucracy that was established by the Democrat Party here in Arkansas over the last 138 years is the one where Bill Clinton got his, got his start. I mean, this is we taught him, and the way he manipulated everything. I mean, that's the birth of arguably the most powerful political family in the world came right out of our own backyard. And if it wasn't for Donald Trump, that we would have put 2 Clintons in the White House, not just one. So anytime we talk about Bill Clinton, we do so with mournful regret. Bill Clinton is in trouble. Bill Clinton is in trouble. And the reason he's in trouble is because of his association with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, listen, we addressed the billionaire via billionaire connection between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein yesterday. I'm going to address that again here in a minute, because that's all the mainstream media really wants to talk about, is the fact that billionaire Donald Trump has been photographed with billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. I'm pretty sure that's common when you're both billionaires. And he said things like he's a terrific guy who likes younger women. Which, if you know anything about Donald Trump now, I mean, now that everybody's looking into this guy, he's the most investigated president ever. Everybody's looking into this guy. And now that you know, and you've heard Donald Trump give more speeches than any of us ever thought we'd ever hear Donald Trump, who's just some guy on NBC on The Apprentice. You never think. Now that you know he's much bigger than that, can you hear the way he would say something like that, by the way? You know? Donald Trump is this classic, especially back then when he's not thinking of politics at all. He's always thinking about, okay, you give him a compliment and then you jab him a little bit. I mean, at least that's the way I take the comment. The mainstream media wants you to think that it was Donald Trump who's been on Jeffrey Epstein's plane 26 times. In fact, Donald Trump hasn't been on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. At least with the flight logs that we have, his name doesn't appear there. But there's a whole lot of other people's names who are on there, like William Jefferson Clinton. He was on the Lolita Express. Now, Bill Clinton has now issued a statement distancing himself from convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. He issues a statement. Let's see if we can you pull this statement up? My computer via Twitter is not acting correctly here. So I'm going to read it on this screen. Yeah, scroll down here. Okay, Bill Clinton distances himself. And, okay, President Clinton knows nothing about the terrible crimes Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to in Florida some years ago, or those with which he has been recently charged in New York. In 2002 and 2003, President Clinton took a total of 4 trips on Jeffrey Epstein's airplane, 1 to Europe, 1 to Asia, 2 to Africa, which included stops in connection with the work of the Clinton Foundation. Staff supporters of the foundation and his Secret Service detail traveled on every leg of every trip. Scrolling down, Joe. He had 1 meeting with Epstein in his Harlem office in 2002, and around the same time period, 1 brief visit in Epstein's New York apartment with a staff member and his security detail. He's not spoken to Epstein in well over a decade and has never been to Little St. James Island, Epstein's ranch in New Mexico, or his residence in Florida. Never been to Little St. James Island. That's the island where all kinds of terrible things allegedly take place. Scrolling down. Breitbart has a good angle on this. The statement denotes, now notice he admits to traveling with Epstein 4 times, but on the logs, he's traveled 26 times. The statement denotes that staff supporters of the foundation and the former president's Secret Service detail were along on every leg of those trips. Fox News, however, reported in May of 2016 that Clinton went on at least 26 trips aboard Epstein's plane, the Lolita Express, between 2001 and 2003, according to flight logs from the Federal Aviation Administration. Listed as the destination for those trips were exotic locales like the Azores, Singapore, Brunei, Norway, and, among other things, Russia. Dun, dun, dun! On at least 5 of those excursions, the flight logs denote that Clinton was not accompanied by any Secret Service. The former president, though, did occasionally travel in the company of Ghislaine Maxwell, a New York socialite, and Sarah Kellen, Epstein's former assistant. Both women were previously investigated by the FBI and Florida law enforcement over concerns they helped recruit Epstein's underage victims. There's also other names out there of people who recruited underage victims. I'm sure they'll be surfacing soon. Clinton claimed he had one meeting with Epstein in his Harlem office in 2002, and around the same time made one brief visit to Epstein's New York apartment with a staff member and his security detail. The former president stated he had not spoken to Epstein in well over a decade and has never been to any of the locations where the abuse is alleged to have taken place. Well, you just said you went to his New York mansion, so that's, first of all, that's some of the abuse allegedly has taken place there. Of course, we know Epstein was arrested. He was charged. Now, in the indictment, there was no mention of Little St. James Island, Jeffrey Epstein's island. So we'll see. Some people are speculating, there's some guy on Fox News speculating that this indictment was just to get Epstein off of the street, that there's another indictment on Epstein possibly on the way. That's much larger. But there's already rumors, even though Epstein pled not guilty, there's already rumors that Epstein is willing to give up the high-profile individuals that have associated with him in the past. And, of course, the mainstream media cannot resist themselves. And they are now pushing a Donald Trump Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy theory. Now, listen, I think we live in the age where it's really the age of pick your conspiracy theory, because nobody believes what the mainstream media tells them anymore. And that's because the mainstream media is compromised and they aren't objective and they all have an agenda. And the ones that have an agenda and try to tell you they don't have an agenda are the ones who are the corporate media. And they are the ones that have made everybody loses faith. They can't believe anything that they're told. And so it becomes a pick your conspiracy theory. Do you believe that Russia put Donald Trump in the White House? That's one conspiracy theory. And there's a whole lot of others. We have to take a break. But this other headline here we'll get to, I'm sure corporate media are pushing a Trump-Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy theory, but they're doing it without evidence. At least with Clinton, you've got the fact that he was on the plane. There are photos of Bill Clinton with girls, with one young girl in particular on what looks like to be on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. Anyway, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute. Welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for starting the beginning of your day with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for starting the beginning of your day with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Folks, I want to introduce you to a guy by the name of Benjamin Powell. Benjamin is an author. The book is titled Socialism Sucks. Two Economists Drink Their Way Through the Unfree World. It's co-authored by, again, Mr. Powell here and his friend Robert Lawson. Benjamin, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you, Paul. Happy to be with you.
Absolutely. So tell us, what inspired you to write this book, sir?
Well, my buddy Bob called me and wanted to get drunk in Cuba, and I needed a decent excuse for a work project. My wife doesn't like me taking vacations with him.
That's fantastic.
That's kind of the funny answer, but the real answer is the rise and popularity of socialism in the United States, again, particularly with young people, and a lot of confusion about what socialism actually is and is not. What's the relationship between democracy and socialism, or lack of relationship? And what countries in the world really are socialist and aren't, and what's the historic track record of performance of the ones who are?
So, yeah, the left says, when we say on the right, okay, name me one successful socialist country. They're like, Norway. It's like, well, no, you can keep your money there. So do you guys make that distinction in the book?
First chapter in the book, the introduction, is called Not Socialism, Sweden. And it applies equally to Norway and Denmark or whatever other Nordic country you want to point out on this. Listen, the Nordic countries have big welfare states. They tax a lot, and they do a lot of transfers, and they regulate labor markets a bit too. But other than that, they're very pro-market. They have minimal business regulation. They have great security of private property rights. They enforce private contracts. They have sound money. They lightly regulate banks. They have free trade. These places are capitalist countries. Socialism means government ownership or control over the factors of production, instead of private property with entrepreneurs making business decisions based on profit and losses. These places are highly capitalist. My co-author, Bob, he also co-authors the Economic Freedom of the World annual report that tries to rank basically how capitalist versus socialist countries are. Denmark, Sweden, Norway, these are all in the top fifth of the index of most free market economies. I think Denmark's even 16th or something like that, barely behind the United States. Now, I think big welfare states have consequences that are bad. Sweden, since adopting a big welfare state, slowed its growth. It didn't become a socialist hellhole, but it did stop growing and is no longer among the very richest nations in the world. Instead, it's in the bottom half of the OECD countries. So there's trade-offs there, but let's not confuse it with socialism.
I completely agree. Yeah, the so-called Swedish model, it might be attractive, big welfare state, but it is not socialism. Textbook. So what about like Venezuela? That would be what we're seeing. That's textbook socialism, isn't it?
It is now.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Trump's doing better in the polls. That's also worrying Democrats. I mean, even polls he shouldn't be doing well in. He's doing better. That's worrying people. And a lot of it has to do with the economy. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he walked across that border in North Korea. Again, there's a lot of people out there that think that Donald Trump is, not an intelligent person. But if you actually watch what he says versus what happens, you can tell that he is. Matter of fact, he's actually, he knows that he is such a hot button issue to the left that he can come out against things that are traditionally thought of as being neutral politically and get the left to come out against them, like the 4th of July, like the left was anti-4th of July. There are people that pay attention to that. And right now, the Democrat Party is selling. You had Elizabeth Warren saying it shouldn't be a crime to cross the border illegally. The Democrat Party has no idea, or maybe they do, but I mean, do they understand how that issue polls with Americans? I mean, I know there are radical Democrats that want open borders, but there are still people who have voted Democrat all their life that would say, of course, we have to have borders, and of course it should be a crime to come into this country illegally. There are some Democrats who believe in social programs to help Americans, not to help everybody across the globe, because there are still, I would imagine, some people who maybe they don't pay attention to politics, but some Democrats that still understand that we do live in a world with finite resources, not unlimited resources. But, I mean, those Democrats are increasingly shrinking, and a lot of them are getting off the boat, and unfortunately they're kind of covertly coming into the Republican Party, which means the sinking ship is filled with more and more radicals. But anyway, we've got more coming your way next. Karen Lugo on the program next. Don't go anywhere.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms. First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
Was, you said when you ask Democratic Socialists what country do they want to be like, and they say a Nordic country. If you go back 10 years ago, this was the poster child for Democratic Socialists. Venezuela, that is. Venezuela was relatively wealthy. Cesar Chavez came to power in what was widely viewed as a free and fair election in 1998. He was reelected, had a new constitution democratically put in. They said this is...
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Ladies and gentlemen, got a special treat here. I want to introduce you to Karen Lugo. She is she's a constitutional lawyer with an emphasis in civil liberties. She's the director of the Center for the 10th Amendment Action at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Karen, thanks so much for coming on the program.
You're welcome. Glad to be with you. And I have consulted with Texas Public Policy Foundation doing 10th Amendment work, but currently I'm speaking in my own personal capacity on this issue regarding the census question and citizenship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you made that clarification. Can you tell us a little bit about what your opinion was? What was your reaction when you first heard this this issue on the census and the Supreme Court essentially handing it back down? And what was your reaction on this?
I would probably go back to an earlier reaction, which was, why is it even controversial to ask the question? And when you're looking from a constitutional scholars or a student of the Constitution's perspective, the Congress has plenary power over naturalization, which is everything to do with immigration and citizenship. And plenary means it's their original power. They are the ones who decide who does what and how voting rights are enforced, and Voting Rights Act came out of Congress. All of that is Congress's, not just bailiwick, it's their duty. And so they have to have this information. And it just, it startled me back in the beginning when there was even controversy about putting the question back on the 10-year census, which, of course, we're now discussing for 2020. The question currently comes up every year on the long form survey that goes to a random number of households. So it's continually being asked. It was on the 10-year census up until 1950, and then it kind of looked like, well, do we really need to ask it every time? Because it didn't appear that there was really much of an issue. At that point, we didn't have a lot of people residing in the United States that were not citizens. So part A to that answer is yes. It was kind of a shock when I found out that there was going to be this big issue over whether or not the question was asked in 2020. And then, of course, the Supreme Court got bogged down with a majority, and Chief Justice Roberts making that fifth person for the majority, getting all involved with how the rulemaking part of the decision to put the question on the census occurred. So it was clear, according to the opinion, that there was not a concern about whether it was lawful or constitutional to ask the question. In fact, much of the reasoning in the opinion affirms the fact that there is authority to ask the question. It's just that it was the rulemaking process that gave five of the justices, pause.
It's so frustrating. Again, we're talking with Karen Lugo. She's talking about this census question. For Americans, I think the average American, they just don't understand this. I mean, why would we not be able to govern ourselves? And I think that's what this really is right. we have the apportionment process in the United States Constitution. We got to know how many people there are so that we can properly seat Congress, right?
Correct. And the 14th Amendment itself talks literally about citizens and how, as we were bringing the legality of the black vote into the constitutional protection process, it was a matter of assessing citizens. And even the congressional debates at that time talked about, well, should we only mention that this is in regards to the fact that there is, we are protecting the black voter rights? And it was decided, no, what we're talking about is citizens. And so there very much is a very basic question as to sovereignty and how this country is organized and governed. We have a total right now of 435 congressional seats. And actually, that's been for about 100 years. So if you have 435 fixed seats, those are going to shift around as far as total population counts. So you're seeing shifts to states like California, which picked up 6 congressional seats after the 2000 census, and that is obviously attributable to the numbers of illegal aliens, in addition to individuals who may be here legally but yet are not U.S. citizens and therefore not able yet to vote, or they're leaving again on student visas, whatever, and will never vote. So why we cannot derive the answer to the question, how many are citizens? Where are the people whose voting rights should be protected and whose representation in the Electoral College should be protected?
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, because it is connected directly to those 6 or those delegates. I said 6 because we're here in Arkansas. Yes. We have 6 of them. Karen, this is pretty incredible, and it is discouraging. Of course, we do have the news that the president's going to try to move forward in some way to still get this on there, and a lot of people are wondering how. I've got a story here. The Department of Justice has announced a new legal team from Fox News, a legal team shift. What do you make of that?
I am very encouraged by the fact that the president is investigating ways through the Justice Department to be able to add the question to the 2020 census possibly via an addendum after printing has been done. My colleagues wrote in the Wall Street Journal about the whole possibility, in addition to adding the question, also then revisiting that rulemaking process and working through what concerns might have been registered by the Supreme Court, or some of those. Some of them are just entirely irrelevant. In fact, they all likely should have been discounted just because the courts only have a limited amount of power to second guess what officials are thinking and the kind of information they're gathering as it goes into rulemaking. But in any event, we are where we are.
Mm-hmm.
So what would happen is this would go to court, and then as Lee Rivkin and or David Rivkin and Lee Casey wrote in Wall Street Journal, it would be a matter of a possible emergency hearing of the case over the summer by the Supreme Court. So while the census question would be added on, then the rulemaking issue, as it would be relitigated, would go back to the court and likely be affirmed as far as affirming the president's authority under the Commerce Department to ask the question.
And let's hope so, because something tells me, and I'm not an attorney like you are, constitutional attorney, but I don't know about second guessing this or that, but I do know anytime in this present day age, anytime we're talking about the possibility of being accused of racism, and the high court, that's what the left would say, that this somehow everything's racist now, but because so much of our immigration problems are coming from the southern border, which you can say are people from from South America, Central America, or Mexico. I think people think maybe the courts are swayed here. Certainly the liberal justices, they think, well, your intent is to be racist, so we don't care if you have the legal authority to do it.
Right. And yet, when you look at some of what is developing, there are districts where American black populations appear to be disadvantaged because there will be, in one case, it was a Haitian community that had populated a particular district, and it was very, very hard to figure out how many, there's a repeat incident of a black elected official not being able to win elections. And it was really hard to figure out who were the eligible voters and how the district should be reviewed because of the distortion in the count and all of the numbers that were there, likely in many cases not legally. So you also have districts in California where majority black populations are just under majority, so 49%, and maybe just over 50%, where there isn't the representation that one would expect as far as the elected officials. And it just begs the question, is it because there is this kind of distortion where the officials who are supposed to enforce voting access, voting rights, and look at how reapportionment is being done, is this because it is a matter of so many individuals there that we are just not able to determine who is an eligible American voter as a citizen?
It's an extremely important issue. Karen Lugo, appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. It's a pleasure to meet you, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Karen Lugo, everybody. We're going to take a break. Going to be back here in just a moment.
Functioning democratic socialist. Two big problems here, of course. The supposed
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms. First, you can catch the show on Facebook.
Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
Functioning democratic socialist. Two big problems here, of course. The supposed success it was having. Venezuela sits on the world's largest oil reserves. And during the period of high oil prices running up to 2013, it was the foreign exchange that they earned from selling oil abroad that they used to subsidize everything all over their economy. But meanwhile, underneath what was happening was they were socializing the means of production, whether or not just government ownership, but government de facto control with edicts of what people could do with their private property. And the system was collapsing. Food imports were increasing dramatically in Venezuela because the food production system was collapsing. As soon as oil prices went down, and in fact, by the way, oil production has gone down because the socialists...
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We are, Joe and I were just kicking around that. Like, did you hear? There's kind of been a blow up over this, over the fact that. So Disney, in an unashamed cash grab, they have been remaking shot for shot. You guys have heard me probably talk about this a little bit. They remake shot for shot the golden age of Disney movies out of the 90s. And, so they had what? Beauty and the Beast, basically shot for shot. Then they have a few others.
Which Beauty and the Beast, I have seen Beauty and the Beast more than once. It's not a bad movie. It's not exact shot for shot.
I saw it too.
There are some extra things thrown in there.
And then they got the Lion King coming out,
which I'm excited for, actually.
And then they've got I'm just no comment. Then they've got they've got Aladdin that's out. Okay, so now they got the Little Mermaid. They're going to do a Little Mermaid, and it was announced that the actress to play Little Mermaid is going to be black. And the initial comments I saw just from the news publications were a lot of leftist liberals saying essentially, "Take that, white people." And then of course there were plenty of other people who said, "Well, the Little Mermaid is a redheaded white girl, and that's who Ariel, the character Ariel, is. That's why would they make this choice when all the other Disney movies have been pretty much exactly? I mean, they've got Mulan coming out. Guess what? Mulan's going to be an Asian girl. And they've got Belle, who is a a white brunette, and they've got Princess Jasmine, who was Arabic. So there's a lot of people that are upset about this. I'm just telling you, there's a ton of people out there.
The only reason I can think that they would do this is because they've had.
There's just too many white princesses.
Well, there's that. There's that. But if you look down the line of things, you've had your white princess movie in Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your Arabic princess movie. You've got
Yep.
Now it's
why not the Prince and the Frog, or the Frog and the Prince? I mean, can you imagine if they took that's the cartoon movie where there's a black Disney princess.
Yeah, the very first black Disney princess.
If they reshot that frame for frame and cast that in a white girl, people would lose their minds. To me, there's nothing. I mean, from what I can tell is, especially from all the leftists out there who were like, "Oh, Disney's woke. Oh, this is great that they're doing this," and it's like, hang on, wait a second though. The source material that everyone's basing this on is the 1989 Disney's Little Mermaid, which is about a red-headed white girl. And matter of fact, this red-headed white girl, the fact that she has red hair, which I guess they could, if the black actress that they've cast in this, I guess they could give her red hair. I mean, I guess they could do that. Maybe they will. But that was the whole point. She had all these sisters, and all of them were, blonde, brunette, or whatever. And then, but then they got, that's what singled her out. And there's nothing that says Western European quite like, somebody who's redheaded, right? I mean, that's pretty much where that comes from.
Well, if there's anything we've learned about modern movie making, even TV shows that draw from a source material, the source material is only remotely necessary. You need it for the story, you need it for certain character developments and character identities, but you don't need it for the race anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's a flexible thing, and gender identity and stuff like that. It's all flexible at this point. They only need it for certain. They only need the source material for certain things.
I've seen some of the memes that are making fun of this. I mean, the internet has memed its way into just comedy gold. They've got this picture of Ryan Gosling in a three-piece suit. It says, "Ryan Gosling, the man who stood against the nation. Martin Luther King, January 11th." It's like a preview poster, like, just saying, people would lose their minds. Anyway, it's all about diversity, and diversity isn't about diversity of thought. It's about what you look like. Gotta have, and that's what I saw some people who were people of color. And they were saying that it's really, really, really terrible that they've cast Ariel as a black woman, and they say what's even worse is the reaction from the left, the reaction from other persons of color, who are like, "Yeah, we got the white people now."
Because if we're gonna be honest, it's kind of a racist cash grab.
Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is. I mean, it's already cash grab. We can just. We'll put that aside.
Yeah,
that's fact.
But
all of these Disney reshoots are cash grabs.
It's a doubled up cash grab. It's a targeted cash grab because it's targeted at one. It's targeted at multiple sets of people. It's targeted at the fans of Disney that loved Ariel growing up, that loved all these movies growing up.
That are like me, 35 years old now. That remember it.
Yeah, it's targeted at a group of people that grew up with these movies, that love these movies, that will go and watch these movies regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they're setting up a whole new targeting system that it's targeted at a race as well.
Yeah,
because even if they didn't grow up with it, they've targeted a race of people and said, "Hey, you're being represented. Come watch this movie."
It's a interesting phenomenon, to say the least, to watch unfold online, just to see the back and forth. And there's some people that just don't care, one way or the other. I mean, some people don't care at all. I'm just one that, I mean, from an observation standpoint, I see it as ridiculous, because we are just trying to. I mean, it kind of goes back to undoing the statues. Taking down the Confederate statues, or now we can't even have a Betsy Ross flag. I mean, it never stops. It's almost like, well, Ariel should have been black. You know, if we'd have been woke to the level of wokeness that we are now, in '89, they should have made her the first black princess.
All I'm saying is if they continue this trend, if they go ahead and remake a Hercules movie based off of the animated movie,
Yeah.
the main actors better all have some level of Greek descent.
Yeah.
If they're going to do this, might as well.
And they might as well. Get John Stamos. Yeah, John Stamos.
Make him Zeus.
Or maybe George Papadopoulos. 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Here it is. By the way, coming up at 7:05, we got former Senator Brian King going to weigh in on Jeremy Hutchinson's guilty plea. He did it again. He pled guilty again, this time in Western District of Missouri. Here is Breitbart.com. Bill Clinton is distancing himself from Jeffrey Epstein. We brought you that one, but then we also have, because of this Jeffrey Epstein situation, this is an interesting piece from Breitbart. Corporate media pushed Trump-Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy theories without evidence, by Joshua Kaplan. He writes, the establishment media is attempting to link Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein without any evidence connecting him to the underage sex trafficking case against the billionaire hedge fund manager. Immediately following a Daily Beast report revealing Epstein's Saturday arrest, a handful of news figures and outlets posted social media posts and stories painting a picture that the wealthy investor's arrest was bad news for President Trump. Now, that may be in terms of, the photos they have with Epstein and Trump back, a long time ago or whatever, or the rare quote about Trump saying, Epstein's a terrific guy or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, for the left to not just say, okay, you got Bill Clinton, obviously that's the biggest story here, because there's way more evidence against Bill Clinton than this circumstantial evidence right now, where you could say, well, Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire and a billionaire knew each other and had their photo taken together. I mean, I'm not saying, it's just odd. It's just odd. And I know everyone's like, the Southern District of New York strikes again. But really, well, I mean, we're also talking about, technically, this is the Trump Justice Department here, by the way, going after Jeffrey Epstein. Something to think about. Let's see, it keeps going. Tim O'Brien, others in the media, including Axios' Jonathan Swan. Epstein's social circle is filled with high-profile connections, including Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, and others. But then they have to throw this in. In 2002, Trump described Epstein as a terrific guy. A lot of fun to be with. Likes beautiful women as much as I do. Many on the younger side. What a jab. That 2002 quote is actually a jab against Jeffrey Epstein. Also, I mean, considering if it is true that Trump never was on any of his planes like Bill Clinton was, I mean, that's certainly Trump letting people know, many on the younger side. Keeps going here. Coming on down to Yahoo News. Go on down where it says Yahoo News published a similar article. Sex trafficking charges against Epstein could rock Trump cabinet. Rehashing the same Trump quote about Epstein while throwing together comments from far-left lawmakers such as Ted Lieu, who has previously been humiliated for pushing debunked conspiracy theories about the president. Despite the hyperbolic headline, author Christopher Wilson buries a claim contradicting his premise 8 paragraphs in. A quote from a lawyer representing a trio of Epstein accusers, or victims, who explained that President Trump actually assisted authorities in building a civil lawsuit against the highly connected investor. Quote, the only thing that I can say about President Trump is that he is the only person who in 2009, when I served a lot of subpoenas on a lot of people, or at least gave notice to some pretty connected people that I want to talk with them, is the only person who picked up the phone and said, let's just talk. I'll give you as much time as you want. I'll tell you what you need to know, and was very helpful in the information that he gave, and gave no indication whatsoever that he was involved in anything untoward whatsoever, but had good information. That checked out, and that helped us. Anyway. But they can't resist themselves now that Russia collusion is, falling apart.
The news and and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms.
First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
Nationalized oil company isn't good at maintaining its facilities. They lost the ability to get so much foreign exchange, and now the country is starving. It's also an example of how you cannot maintain democratic freedoms with a socialist economic system. A socialist economic system entails planning and coordination by the government. It entails centralizing power. Once you do that, you cannot have people oppose your plans. And when they try to do so politically, invariably the people with the political power crack down on them. So the Venezuelan elections this last time around for Maduro were a complete sham. Government employees at government nationalized companies were told that they must go vote for the current regime. People are handed out food aid by the government next to the polling places. When Maduro overwhelmingly gets reelected, and the average Venezuelan lost 24 pounds last year, you know the election is a fraud. They didn't all of a sudden find Jenny Craig. They're starving under his system.
Gosh, yeah, it's absolutely terrible. And I agree with the president in the State of the Union when he said, we will never be a socialist country. It's trying to protect the people from what, Venezuela and what other people have gone through. I mean, talk about Cuba. I mean, this is an example. By the way, folks, we're talking with Benjamin Powell. He's co-author of a book, Socialism Sucks. 2 economists drink their way through the unfree world. I want to get to the drinking part here in a minute, Benjamin. But tell us a little bit about Cuba.
Sure, and before I do, I just want to say final word on Venezuela, too. This is a point related to what you're saying about not happening here. I mean, Venezuela in 1970 was a highly capitalist country. It was among the top 10 freest economically in the world, and they were very wealthy. They were wealthier than Spain itself. So the poverty and that we observed in Venezuela, people crossing the border to Colombia trying to buy basic necessities, these were people who were previously middle class, upper middle class. It wasn't the type of normal third world poverty that you see traveling to poorer countries. So it really is a warning to other wealthy places of what you can do to yourself with these policies.
Yeah, destroy your civilization. So Cuba then.
So Cuba is, of course, a much longer experiment with socialism than Venezuela. In the book, we call Cuba subsistence socialism because it's
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. 870-275-9799. It is hour number 2. Thank you so much for being with us. So we had this headline in the middle of the day yesterday. Former state senator Jeremy Hutchinson pleads guilty to bribery charge in the Western District Court of Missouri. Essentially, he said, yeah, I took bribes from the Missouri nonprofit using taxpayer dollars. It is preferred family health care, something that you guys have heard a lot about if you've been following this story. Prosecutors agreeing to dismiss the remaining charges when he is sentenced. We'll see what happens. The Gazette noting that, quote, the veteran lawmaker hails from a powerful family that has produced a former U.S. senator and the state's current governor, and he now faces up to 13 years in federal prison. Joining us now to talk about this, we've got another former state senator on the line. Senator Brian King is with us. Hey, Brian, how's it going this morning?
It's going good. Good morning, Paul.
Yeah, good morning to you. What's your reaction to all of this? I mean, I know you served with Jeremy, and you guys didn't see eye to eye on hardly anything.
Well, Paul, when it came, I don't know if you spoke about the orthodontist and the $150,000 bribe that he pled guilty to, and then he pushed the legislation through, and then he got other people to run the legislation for him. When it came time for that bill, there was 2 people in the Senate that didn't vote on it, and one was Jeremy Hutchinson, and the other one was me. But, I guess in reacting to it, the sad part about it is no one's, not surprised. This has been going on for several years up there, been carried out. He, and there's times that I look back now and think, maybe I should have saw this or that, and you didn't see it. Then you start seeing something and you start wondering, and then there's a point there you start going, there is something going on here, and you start questioning it, and then, that's when the floodgates open on you. And, that's what happened to me. That's what happened to Linda up there. And, then you're ostracized. You're called crazy. You're called mean. You're called a bully for trying to do this. And so, the really thing is, it's really just not surprising with him.
Mm-hmm.
You go back and look at his legislation that he ran consistently, you can see a lot more things now. And, you just wonder how much more money did he take?
Yeah, I wonder, for example, he passed just a resolution one time. It was just a resolution recognizing Tom and Bontia Goss, the heads of Preferred Family Health Care, who are in a lot of trouble for using all this taxpayer dollars to enrich themselves and bribe politicians to keep the Medicaid dollars coming to them. Did people know then what was going on? I think they did. I think they suspected, he's passing this resolution honoring the heads of this Medicaid giant company, and he's probably, making $9,000 a month. They might not have known he was making that much from them, But, I mean, everybody knew what was going on, it seems like. Brian? Oh, did we lose Brian? Brian, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, are you back with me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead. Respond to that. Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, I did. And you know, it just seemed like over a period of time because, you know, you're busy handling other legislation. You're busy doing other things. You're not busy focused on things. And it just didn't seem. But, you know, when things really started to open up, it's just like when Gilbert Baker started getting exposed. And to me, when the bubble really burst was when, you know, you had the Faith and Freedom deal and Michael Lamoureux getting $120,000. That's when it really burst for me. I mean, you know, there was always these things going on. You hear things and you wonder, but you just really didn't know for sure, and you really couldn't say anything. But, you know, and you look back at, and, you know, we've talked about it multiple times, which, you know, look at the media. They never talk about this part. They never look into this. I mean, look at the Medicaid disclosure bills. I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know about what's going on. And, you know, they played games with it. Jeremy was the biggest one of the biggest that fought it. He had his helpers in trying to defeat it to cover up his own actions. And, you know, they're the ones in power. And, you know, certainly, you know, the governor, his uncle didn't do anything. Jim Hendren protected Jeremy Hutchinson. They all protected him up there. Now, here's the question. Why? I mean, why were you so afraid of you know, and you get you would get the answers of like, well, you know, this would do this. I mean, remember, and, you know, I mean, it's like Jeremy, give the feds credit for putting this together and getting it done. But, you know, now the question is that the media down there will not ask. I mean, they literally let it get away. They're culprits in this and help, you know, cover it up. You know, I can remember, you know, Linda fighting Jeremy and Senate Judiciary in 17, you know, me, and then the media the next day would be like writing something totally different than what actually happened. I mean, it was so pathetic. It was almost like this is North Korean news page.
You mentioned the question that everybody should be asking now. What do you think that is?
No, I think it is. Well, why did you do? You know, why didn't something happen? I mean, how was, you know, once 17 came around the session, there was enough clear suspicion about what was going on. Just suspicion with Jeremy and the legislation he was running. It was clear as a bell. How is he able to talk, like on the orthodontist bill, how is he able to talk two people, Lance Eads and Michelle Gray, into running the legislation for him? I mean, why was Jeremy Hutchinson able to pass major legislation? I mean, people ask me, you know, was Jeremy, where was he at? You know, I would put Jeremy one of the top 5 people in the Senate, clearly, that was able to pass legislation, work on major legislation. And, you know, he runs a bill that involves behavioral health and Senate Judiciary. I start questioning him over it. And he didn't like it, okay? And he was evasive in his answers, wouldn't give straight answers, you know, like he did. And clearly he didn't want to talk about it. And you know what? Guess what? It all still passes. I mean, there should have been something whenever in 17 to say, you know, he doesn't need to be passing that.
So
I mean, he doesn't need.
I was asking this question at last hour. It's a hypothetical, but if he hadn't been indicted, he wouldn't have resigned. And if he hadn't resigned, he would have served this last session. And I think everybody's still knowing everything, the suspicions and all the investigations and everything. I think, like you said, he still would have been able to work on and pass major legislation, and the stuff he wanted to get through would have gotten through, right?
Yeah, there's no question about it. And, you know, it's one thing about the corruption part, but it's the other thing when you look at his legislation. I mean, you look at the whole, we've talked about, I continue to talk about the crime crisis that we have going on. You know, look at Little Rock. Look at even in rural communities of people that continually steal and don't get sentenced to crimes, don't accept rehabilitation or responsibility, and nowhere to put them. I mean, it's just consistently talk about Paul about like the time to turn the page on Jeremy and move on and start asking other questions. I mean, once again, look at the Medicaid disclosure bills. I mean, look at who all fought it. Look at Jeff Wardlaw, who now we have found out not only did he have something to hide, he was in major business dealings with David Norsworthy.
Yeah.
That had to deal with Medicaid. What has happened to him?
Well, and here's the thing on that. Here's the thing on Jeff Wardlaw. So, that came out at the very beginning of the session. It was a big story. I went back and pulled a video of him, talking against this Medicaid disclosure bill. And if you go listen to his arguments now, knowing what we knew about him potentially being exposed and having to report all that business, it was a very condemning video, and nothing happened. And what I mean by that is the session went on as if everything is fine, and from what I could tell, there was no lack of trust, and every State Representative Wardlaw was continued to be given the benefit of the doubt, and I just found that odd. But I mean, it just kind of goes to show that, and unless the feds get involved and you actually get arrested for something, then there's really no consequences.
No, there's not going to be anything. There's no one down there outside of a couple of people that have the courage. There's certainly no one in the Senate willing to step up and question. I mean, look at the part about the loans, or these loans, or, they call them loans. Jeremy Gillum. What happens to Jeremy Gillum? You know what? He gets a big, cushy, $100-something thousand a year job, which is a total waste of taxpayer money. I mean, it is just continually, card after card gets, falling this. Like, when we talk about Jeff Wardlaw, when you oppose something, you should make a reasonable argument. Well, his argument was that we create a whole new division at DHS. I mean, it's just complete falsehood.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no substantial, didn't document it. DHS, which should document it. If there was a DHS official, should have gave the committee something, outlined something that proved that. If you couldn't prove it, then you're starting to give information or arguments, not based on facts, but on falsehood. You should be discredited. I mean, Jeff Wardlaw should have been run out of the legislature, really, for what he did. And, the second person that you start asking questions about is Michelle Gray. I mean, she was one of them in that committee that was making the arguments against all this. Well, she runs this legislation for Jeremy and the orthodontist. I'm not saying anything's wrong, but you know what? Maybe she needs to answer some questions.
Well,
why did you run for Jeremy?
Anybody that opposed your bill that you ran multiple times for lawmakers to have to disclose the business they were doing with Medicaid entities, anyone that opposed that, it doesn't look good. I mean, it just doesn't look good. Considering what we know with Jeremy and what we know with anybody connected to preferred family health care that we know about, it certainly looks really, really bad. We're talking with former State Senator Brian King. He's reacting to Jeremy Hutchinson pleading guilty a second time in the Western District of Missouri. Brian, are you hearing anything about Jeremy Hutchinson cooperating with the government and maybe giving up other people involved in this?
No, I don't know any. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that's conversation. I mean, who knows what's happening with that part of it? I mean, so no, I did not know anything about that, or wouldn't even want to begin to speculate on it.
Yeah.
Basically, my day revolves around chickens and cattle and Duke and Petey, my dogs, and the.
Are you glad to be out of that environment down there?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, you look at the Senate right now. There's nobody that's going to have any courage to speak up and get tough and demand answers. So there's none, zero. It's pathetic. I mean, Jim Hendren should be and Dismaying and that bunch should be, grilled beyond any be grilled consistently, and nothing happened.
Yeah,
nothing happened, and so it's just a sad world down there, because what's happened, Paul, is it's like you read the newspaper on some bank robbery and somebody walks in and robs the bank and then walks out. Well, there's people, there's witnesses. I mean, if no one said anything, Jeremy is a criminal. That's what he is. Okay, he didn't make a mistake. You get down there, sometimes you can trust people you didn't know, find out later. You learn as you, unfortunately, down there, you learn, and people down there can be nice to you that are really have something very deceitful or evil back behind it, and you kind of have to learn and go through the process to trust people. But Jeremy is a criminal. I mean, he consistently carried out these things that stole money off people.
Yeah, taxpayer money.
Stupid. And so you walk in a bank and somebody robs the bank, and no one says anything down there. In fact, they just act like nothing's going on, and they stand up and clap, and like I said, they reward somebody like Jeremy Gillum with $100,000 year jobs, which is a total waste of taxpayer money. At the same time, you're raising taxes on the regular Joe to pay for highways. I don't know. Like I said, they have
certainly frustrating. Yeah.
At DHS.
Let me ask you this
and
last
stole
question.
money, and no one will do it.
Let me ask you this last question. You mentioned Senator Hendren, you mentioned Senator Dismang, and the bunch down there. You said they need to be grilled. They need to be asked all these questions by the media. Do you think,
or college?
Do you think that they're not being asked those questions? Because I mean, if they raise some of the questions that you just raised, I think eventually they would just stop talking to some of the mainstream media reporters. They just wouldn't talk to them at all. And so I think there's also kind of the fear with some of these guys that their access would be cut off.
I don't, what? Guess what? That's if that's your reasoning, you have another reason. Okay, that's your job to be asking questions and stuff. It's your job as colleagues to be questioning things that obviously went on that can't be explained, that need more detail and explanation. I mean, but what happens when you do that? You certainly have, like Linda Collins or me, you have all this dirty, dark money behind the scenes that's funding all these things with lies. You have, it's pretty clear now, Governor Hutchinson, why he opposed Linda and why he wanted me out so bad is because we were the only voices that would say anything and speak up. I mean, most of this corruption is still going on. There's still massive amounts of money being wasted, and the taxpayers are being looted out of the DHS appropriation bill, and there's not even a whimper of anything to stop there and say this shouldn't go on. It shouldn't be the feds that have to come in and do this. I mean, this should have been ended, a few years ago, and should have been stopped by the people down there, and not the feds.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
Well, I'm certainly grateful. I know you're grateful for the feds. I mean, the wheels of justice turn slowly, but they finally kind of got around to coming full circle here. Like you said, Jeremy Hutchinson is a criminal, and we'll see if there's any more any more indictments or guilty pleas to come. And I really appreciate it, former Senator Brian King. It's always great to have you on, sir.
Hey, thanks, Paul.
All righty, folks. You guys, we're going to take a break here and going to reset. Facebook.com/Conduit News, the comment section going crazy. Jackie writing, sounds like Senator King just exchanged one barnyard for another. That's pretty funny. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms.
First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News.
From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com.
Paul Harrell
then,
here.
in the search
For
bar,
those that
search
can't
for
catch
Conduit News.
Radio with me
Select the
every
Conduit
morning
News
from 6
page
a.m.
as it
to 8.
appears. While
Don't panic.
here, be
You
sure
can
to hit the
always
subscribe
listen
button
anytime on
and
our
hit the
digital
little bell
platforms
to receive
using your smartphone or
notifications
computer.
when new
I'm
videos
here
are
to
ready.
help you navigate
From YouTube,
to
you
the
can
many
also
options you
watch
have to
every
watch or
live
listen to
show
the show
daily and
across our
all the
digital
interviews I
platforms.
have with guests. First, you can catch
More
the show
options
on
are
Facebook.
available at our
Just
website,
use your internet browser and type in select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. From there, you can watch each day's on the left side of your screen, or watch old episodes and interviews. You can watch the full 2-hour show, audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. Another for audio-only versions of the show on YouTube. You have some options. Just use for your Apple internet iPhone users. Type in simply use the podcast app and search in the search bar. Conduit search News. For Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. Also watch, and that goes for Android users as well. And all the interviews
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars.
Watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics.
You have sell product or not. Not the matter of being poor. You can go to some of the poorest countries of the world, and beer companies give away their signs for free to let you know you can find it there. The prices in Cuba.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. Welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Woodward and Bernstein, of course, we remember, Carl Bernstein is the guy that CNN really wants. They use him as a credible source because of what happened with Watergate and his work on Watergate. So now he's the credible source because they want you to think that Donald Trump's going to be a Nixon 2.0. And so he was used by CNN to do all of these Russia hit stories, Russia hit pieces about Donald Trump and Russia collusion and everything else. And now he's admitted on CNN this past Sunday, reliable sources, that the establishment media made a, quote, big mistake with how it covered Robert Mueller, the special counsel, Russia collusion. He said this, quote, "I think we've made a big mistake in the press about how we've covered the Mueller report. We've gotten totally wrapped up in warfare in the Congress between Republicans and Democrats. And is there obstruction of justice or is there not obstruction of justice? In fact, there are dozens and dozens of leads in there about Trump's business dealings. Things having to do with women as well that we know about from elsewhere and trying to keep women silent who have been in his past about his business dealings, about oligarchs, about money laundering and Ponzi schemes." Okay, so they went too hard on the Russia too fast, and then there was nothing to come of it, meaning there was no collusion found. And so now the media has no credibility because they lied to people for 2 years. And so now diving into some of the other things that are in the Mueller report, according to Bernstein, it's no one wants to pay attention to them. Huh, interesting. It's like they fell into their own nets.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms.
First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. And that goes for Android users as well.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
Are crazy, off, wrong. Economics, price theory works, but it doesn't reflect the real scarcities around the globe because of their planned economy. They have a tremendous shortage, as this will resonate with listeners probably. Everybody knows the quintessential American automobiles in Cuba. The old 1950s automobiles. Do you have any idea? These things are held together with popsicle sticks and bubble gum. Wow. Any idea what one of them goes for? Keeping in mind that the average Cuban earns less than $3.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. So we do these segments called Young Conservatives. We want you to know the future of the conservative movement. There are young people out there that actually believe in smaller government and things like that. And so I was introduced to. I met this gentleman here sitting next to me. I guess at the Greene County Republican Committee last week, and was talking with Anita Wells, who's the chairman of the Greene County Republicans, and we talked about doing a Young Conservative segment with this man sitting next to me. His name is John Williams. John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for having me on, Paul.
Yep, absolutely. So, first of all, John Williams, a name like that, you're going to hear about, obviously, the famous composer all your life, right?
Yeah. I wish I wrote all of his pieces.
Yeah. Don't we all? But, man, they are fantastic. Anyway, so this, I'm going to give you the floor, because this is the Young Conservative, so we kind of ask the same boilerplate questions, but how did you get a conservative worldview?
Yeah. So it started first, I grew up in a conservative household with parents that worked hard for a living. I saw them work day in, day out, just trying to make a living, provide for me and my brother. And so that made an impact on me. But I think it was the 2008 and 2012 elections when I really started paying attention. So 2008, I was in the 6th or 7th grade. I didn't really know what was going on. I knew my parents wanted John McCain to win. So that's what I went along with. But by 2012, that's when I really started listening to not only what they were saying, but why they were saying it, and what was the reasoning behind their positions. And so 2012 was really formative for me, listening to these completely polar opposite positions, because I really think that's when conservative and liberal really got to the polar opposite on the spectrum, is 2012. And just asking myself, what kind of America do I want to live in? And it was an obvious choice, a conservative, smaller government. And from there on, I've been involved with the Greene County Republican Party, now living in Craighead, joined the Craighead Republican Party committee, and just trying to make at least somewhat of a small difference.
Yeah. No, and I think that's really good. And the 2012 elections, that was, of course, you have Mitt Romney, you have Barack Obama. You have Barack Obama who's saying, if you have a business, you didn't build that. And then you had Mitt Romney, who was certainly more pro-business. Of course, now we know a lot more about Mitt Romney. That is pretty interesting.
He's not as conservative as he said he was.
Of course not. And he could have won. He might have won if he would have actually treated what happened in Benghazi for what it was and brought it up during the debate. But he didn't do that. So when you hear the word, we're talking with John Williams, young conservative. When you hear the word conservative, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So to me, it means a lot of different things. It's more than just a belief. It's like you said, a worldview. It's a lens by which I look at the world. It's a belief that we were given natural rights by God, and it's the government's responsibility to stay out of our rights, to stay as little as possible. We should have the freedom, the liberty to pursue our dreams without government intrusion. So it's a smaller, limited government for the individual to pursue their dreams, their desires, take chances, make mistakes, and try again. It's hard to do that if you got an overreaching government that is trying to make decisions for you in your life. So it's a smaller government, but I also think there's a moral argument can be made for conservatism, especially in the context of a capitalist society. A conservative capitalist country is going to result in the most wealth growth for all classes, the lower, the middle, and the upper class. You hear Democrats talking all the time about wanting to create social programs to help the lower class. But the best option for the lower middle class is to create an environment without the government being involved, so that they can take those chances and try making a name for themselves, make a living for themselves without the government being so involved in their life. So I think there's a moral argument can be made that a conservative capitalist country is going to result in the most wealth growth for all individuals in a society, rather than a more socialist, hands-on government approach.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So, I would even kind of expand on that. The opposite of that would be dependency on the government, for these basic, basic things. And so the question would, is there any realm where dependency is immoral? It would be my question. I think the answer is yes. Obviously, I believe in if you can't really help yourself, if you truly can't help yourself, then okay, we've got a program for that, right? Like there's an app for that. But at what point does, and this is, when I was a liberal in college, and a little bit right out of college, I didn't think these things through. You think, okay, well, the Democrats, they're just wanting to help people. But at what point does that help actually hurt individuals? I was watching this documentary, I think, on Netflix a couple of years ago called Poverty, Inc. If you haven't seen this, I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but it's fantastic. You guys listening should check it out. But it has to do with the fact that all these non-governmental organizations are they're essentially an entity, an industry in and of itself. So there's something bad that happens in a country, earthquake, tsunami, something. Okay, that we initially get there to help people, but then those people are donated. Those organizations never leave, and in often cases, these third world countries that did have some form of economy, they did have some form of businesses and entities, they never recover. Tom's Shoes is a great example of this. You buy a pair of shoes and they say they'll donate a pair to a needy country. Well, the shoemakers in these countries, these third world countries, when the Tom's Shoes truck gets there and drops off a bunch of free shoes, then all of a sudden, your businesses are, completely, their business is gone overnight. They're not going to be able to they got to wait for all these people to run out of shoes before they can make shoes again. So there is this idea where if you don't leave it up to this, Benjamin Franklin said, people need to be uncomfortable in their poverty so that they can get out of the poverty. So, being somebody who's young, how long have you been out of college, John?
About a little over 2 years.
Okay, so 2 years. So when you were in college, were you around a lot of liberals? I mean, were there a lot of people that had this progressive worldview that, hey, well, it's the Democrats that want to help people. The Republicans don't, which is not true, by the way. But how did you combat that?
Yeah, so I encountered that a lot. I majored in communications, then I picked up a second major in philosophy. So I took a lot of social and political philosophy courses, and certainly didn't encounter a lot of leftist liberal thought in those courses. And I welcomed it. I knew why I believed what I did. And I think the challenge was good to help solidify why I believed what I did.
Yes.
So I didn't look at it as a bad thing. I looked at it as an opportunity. Okay, this is a great way for me to better understand what I believe and better articulate that whenever I'm questioned by someone that may disagree with me. Now, the same can't be said for everyone. A lot of people, when they hear a professor talk, they're going to take their word for it. They're not going to go fact check. They're not going to go look for themselves. Is this really true? Or is there a better option?
Right.
Because socialism, it may sound great on paper, but when you start reading and you really look at what all that entails, it's not going to result in the best society possible for all individuals.
Yeah, I think socialism looks great on a chalkboard, looks great on paper. The only way it works is if you have perfect human beings.
And we're not.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work.
Yeah. And Milton Friedman said many times, there's that Donahue clip that goes around the YouTube about angels. Show me, where are these angels that are going to govern the affairs of men in your utopia, in your socialist system? And I think that's what so many people on the left, especially as we've pushed God out of public life, are having to deal with. The fact that a lot of people want to be perfect. They have this quest for perfection, but they don't understand that, first of all, that's not who we are naturally as we're born into this world. So talk about, has your faith, does your faith in a higher power, does that shape your political opinions, as well?
I think that's the core of what shapes my beliefs. It all stems from my belief in God, that we do have these inalienable rights that God has given us, and we are to protect those not only for ourselves but for other individuals. I was just reading the other day, Margaret Thatcher had a quote one time, people are always concerned about getting a grant, getting a government handout, but in reality we should rely on each other, not the government, to help us when we're in need. And I think that's where my Christian faith comes in. I'm not supposed to go seek help from the government. I'm supposed to seek help from my fellow neighbor, and I'm supposed to offer help whenever someone is struggling that I know.
Yeah.
So I think there's a reliance that we need to have on each other rather than the government, and I think that stems a lot from my Christian beliefs, and that's, I think, why we see conservative Christians donate more to charity than any other group in the United States.
Yeah.
I think it stems from that idea.
You raised some really good points. Again, we're talking with John Williams. This is a young conservative segment. Yeah, and I've heard this said before. A lot of churches today, they believe that they themselves, failed by not taking care of the poor enough that made these government programs spring up. Now, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. I really don't, because I think that, I think there's some truth to that. But I think now, when it comes to, because there are ministries that are growing, there are churches that are growing. There are studies from the Heritage Foundation that will tell you that poverty is not it's not just a material issue. That oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, people in poverty have a lot of other stuff going on in their lives, like really just a fundamental breakdown in their relationships, whether it's family relationships or whatever. But now we do have a situation where, because these government programs for people who don't truly need it are so massive, it does work against the church, because or charitable programs where the charities can be close and right next to these people, and they can start to try to correct some of those other problems that have nothing to do with just simple lack of material possession. Where the government looks at somebody and says, "Oh, you lack material needs. Okay, well, how old are you? When's your birthday? How much money you make a year? Okay, here it is. You're getting a check every month, regardless of what you do with that check, regardless of how you behave." Versus somebody who actually cares, like you meet someone on the street, or you have a friend that's going through a hard time. Well, maybe that friend has done some really bad stuff. Maybe there's a reason that they're in the spot that they're in. Maybe they need to stop doing a behavior. Maybe they're caught in a vice. Maybe they're not loving their family the way they should. And when you have that personal charity, now we're closer to the situation, and we can now remove it if somebody is just refusing to change some of the things that may have led to their circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
now we have a situation where the government is actually making it harder, for people to not change their behavior.
Yeah, they're hampering, they're creating another barrier for them to get over. It's kind of like you can give a man a fish, or you can teach a man how to fish. And if you teach a man how to fish, they're gonna be set for the rest of their life. But if you just give them a fish every day, they're gonna be relying on that instead of knowing how to do it themselves.
Yeah. What moving forward? What do you think is your, what's your number one hope for the country, for the state of Arkansas? I mean, we got the 2020 elections. What are you looking for?
Well, for the state of Arkansas, I would like that we finally elect some legislators that have a spine, that are going to stand up for the everyday American, that will actually stand for the conservative beliefs that they campaigned on of lower taxes, limited government, and more individual freedom. That's what I would like to see going forward in the 2020 and 2022 election. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. Hopefully more people are waking up to realize that just because you got an R behind your name doesn't mean you're actually conservative. So we got to really vet our candidates, make sure that they're a true conservative, and they're going to stand up for our beliefs down in Little Rock instead of giving in to lobbyists and fall into corruption themselves.
You mentioned higher taxes. So do you think, have you heard the news that taxes are going up?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's one. It infuriates me, and every Arkansan should be just as bad as me, that our taxes are going up and that we've been lied to by our representatives and our senators that campaigned on lower taxes, on ensuring that we have a smaller government. But when you raise taxes, you're inevitably going to also create a larger government. They go hand in hand. More money for the government's going to grow larger, and so. Arkansan citizens need to wake up and realize that they've been lied to by their state legislators.
Wow. John Williams, Young Conservative, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for coming on. Absolutely. Folks, we'll have a YouTube video up of this specific interview if you want to share it with your friends. It'll be up at conduitnews.com. Go to the YouTube channel and click the little button to subscribe and the little bell to receive notifications. John, we really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Folks, we're going to take a break. Back in a minute.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hi, folks. Paul Harrell here. For those that can't catch Conduit News Radio with me on the radio every morning from 6 a.m. to 8, don't panic. You can always listen anytime on our digital platforms using your smartphone or computer. In this video, I'm here to help you navigate to the many options you have to watch or listen to the show across our digital platforms.
First, you can catch the show on Facebook. Just use your internet browser and type in facebook.com/Conduit News. From there, select Videos on the left side of your screen. From there, you can watch the full 2-hour show each day or select specific interviews you want to watch. Another place you can watch the show is on YouTube. Just use your internet browser and type in youtube.com. Then, in the search bar, search for Conduit News. Select the Conduit News page as it appears. While here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell to receive notifications when new videos are ready. From YouTube, you can also watch every live show daily and all the interviews I have with guests. More options are available at our website, conduitnews.com. Select the Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell tab. Here, you can watch each day's show live or watch old episodes and interviews. You can also catch audio-only versions of the show right here on this page of the website. For audio-only versions of the show, you have some options. For Apple iPhone users, simply use the podcast app and search Conduit News. Subscribe to the podcast and get each hour of the show automatically in your app daily. You can also download the SoundCloud app from your app store and search Conduit News to find your station. and that goes for Android users as well.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We want to make sure you get the latest on Arkansas news and politics. You have many options to know what government is doing in your name and with your tax dollars. Learn more at conduitnews.com.
$1,000 a year.
I have no clue.
Over $15,000. And a modern car like a Peugeot from the, by modern in quotations here, Peugeot from the 1990s, these might go for $30,000. They just have a huge scarcity of cars because the government doesn't allow importation of them, or very limited importation of them. They'll like to blame it on the U.S. so-called blockade, they call it, but the embargo just prohibits the U.S. companies from sending cars there. It doesn't prevent Kias or anything else from going there. The Cuban government that does it. So the prices are all wrong. They have limited free enterprise there. So no system is absolute pure capitalism or pure socialism. The limited private enterprise, they allow individuals to rent out rooms in their houses, and they allow limited private restaurants. And there you can see the power of incentives. They're well kept, the people are timely, they try hard. In contrast,
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Welcome back to the show. 870-275-9799. Jeremy Hutchinson, we were telling you this. Hang on one second. What's going on? We were telling you this at the beginning of the program, or the beginning of the hour, rather. We had former Senator Brian King on, and he was reacting to the news that the governor's nephew, Jeremy Hutchinson, former senator, has again pled guilty to taking bribes in exchange for passing legislation. Now, the real question now is, who is he going to flip on, right? Arkansas Democrat Gazette writing, the veteran lawmaker hails from a powerful family that has produced a former U.S. senator and the state's current governor. He now faces up to 13 years in federal prison. Now, this whole thing has been multi-year investigation. If you don't know about this, you need to ask yourself why, by the way. If you're listening to the program right now and you don't know that there has been a massive Federal Bureau of investigation on the state of Arkansas for multiple years, and you don't know that they have that Jake Files is in prison, that John Woods is in prison, that State Representative Micah Neal is in jail, that you have lobbyists who are in jail, that you have one lobbyist who was arrested trying to kill a witness in New Jersey. If you don't know this, ask yourself why you don't know this. Ask yourself why Milton Russell, Rusty Cranford, how come you don't know that he was arrested with a revolver with several $1,000s, $17,000 on him, and the government claims they have video or audio of him trying to start a murder for hire plot, trying to hire a felon who was supposed to go to New Jersey and kill a guy named Don Jones. I'm not making this up. He was supposed to go kill a guy named Don Jones, who had pled guilty the previous December to taking bribes and from a Medicaid entity, this Medicaid entity called Preferred Family Healthcare. If you don't know any of this, first of all, you're not listening to enough Conduit News. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, why does the media take these explosive stories and report on them one time? And then that's pretty much it, unless something happens, like, okay, the governor's nephew has pled guilty. Again, he pled guilty 2 weeks ago in Arkansas. Now he's pled. Now, so who is Jeremy going to flip on? Who's he going to turn on and give up? I mean, if you read the indictment, yeah, there are more people involved here. But I want to know, like you want to know, is it finally going to stop or is it going to keep going? This is, anyway, the telephone number, you can call or text 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program. Now, moving on. This Zero Hedge article caught my eye today as we wrap things up this morning. And it has to do with Jeffrey Epstein. So Jeffrey Epstein, of course, this billionaire pedophile, already convicted pedophile, he's now been indicted on sex trafficking, young girls, and everything else. Bill Clinton is implicated. The media is trying to say that Donald Trump is implicated when there's not the hard evidence to say these things. But of course, with the Russia collusion, Russia collusion fell through, so they got nothing else. But anyway, this headline over at Zero Hedge, before SHTF, you know what SHTF stands for? The fan. Before it hits the fan. I've never heard it abbreviated before either. I was sitting right where you were at 5:30 this morning, Joe, being like, SHTF. What does SHTF stand for? Anyway, let's revisit Jeffrey Epstein's little black book. With the Saturday arrest of Jeffrey Epstein, who is reportedly offering to name elite pedophiles in exchange for leniency, a leaked copy of the billionaire sex predator's little black book may provide some insight into some very rich individuals who should be nervous right about now. The book was smuggled out of Epstein's residence by his former house manager, Alfredo Rodriguez, who was busted trying to sell it in 2009 for $50,000, only to get caught, charged with obstruction of justice, and die in prison 18 months later from a, quote, long illness. Sounds like he was Whitey Bulgered. According to an FBI affidavit, Rodriguez described the address book and the information contained within it as the holy grail or golden nugget to unraveling Epstein's sprawling child sex network. Stop. Let me say, you want to know about a sprawling child sex network, you also need to look at the southern border, because that's the main reason you have to shut down the flow of immigrants. The main reason is, number one, the child sex trafficking that is going on is something the mainstream media will not tell you about. They try to claim that they have the moral high ground, that walls are immoral when they're allowing this to go on. It's indefensible when you understand the level of sex trafficking going on our southern border that no one talks about. Donald Trump will talk about it, but hardly anybody else will talk about it. Well, Ted Cruz will talk about it, and a few others will talk about it. Real quick, let me read this sentence, and then we're going to get to your meme of the day. But despite having been subpoenaed for everything he had on his former boss, Rodriguez didn't share it with the FBI or Palm Beach Police Department detectives investigating Epstein. Instead, he tried to make a $50,000 score by covertly peddling the black book to one of the attorneys launching lawsuits at Epstein on behalf of his victims. That according to Gawker in a 2015 article. Go read this before it hits the fan. It's fascinating, some of the names that are listed. Your meme of the day. Perfect for today's story about the corporate media leaving the evidence and facts. We have CNN as the knife and the cake as news stories. And CNN carves out a big slice or maybe a small slice of facts and evidence and takes everything else. Leaves the slice of facts and evidence and takes the rest of the cake. We'll post this meme up at Conduit News, Twitter at Conduit News, Facebook.com/Conduit News here in a couple of minutes. Arkansas, have a great day and be safe.
Talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.